Today the focus is on bluegrass festivals, and as I think I mentioned in passing briefly last time, string music festivals have been around a whole lot longer than jazz festivals, and going back to the early 20s. And in fact, that was probably the first focal point for the gathering of folk musicians and fiddlers and banjo players. And we are lucky to have with us 3 people associated with the largest bluegrass festival in the Northeast. That's the Gray Fox Festival, held, well, originally in Ancramville, and now it is Ancramdale, and now it's in Oak Hill, New York. My wife and I went 2 years ago to it, and it was terrific. They have, was it 20,000 people?
Over 4 days.
Over a 4-day festival with every name in bluegrass you could imagine, and some none of you can imagine. But by the end of the show, by the end of the course, you will know their names. It's in Greene County. It's about, let's say, about an hour from here, maybe, towards Albany, and
It's on Route 81, west of Coxsackie.
And it's a great site and a great occasion, and it's like Woodstock for older people. Woodstock without the chemical enhancements.
I was going to say Woodstock was our age group, folks.
I want to make a question. I am always impressed with how many young people brought their children and teenagers.
That's true.
I brought
Playing.
Playing.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, you will see some in the film today. But we have with us first Mary Daub, who is the producer of Gray Fox, and has been with it from the outset. And her assistant producer, Mary Burdett, is with us. And we also have with us Ruth Oxenberg, who, with her husband, made a film back in 2004, I believe it was, called Bluegrass Journey. Some of you may have seen it. It was on public television. If you haven't seen it, you're going to see at least part of it today. And I would encourage you to try to get a copy of it, or I know they have it in the Adrian's library system. And it'll give you a real sense of what these festivals are like. And this is going to be a different format than the rest of our weeks, in that we're hoping for a relatively informal panel discussion, and both Marys have said they welcome comments from the floor or questions as they discuss the festival in group. Then we're going to show you as much as we can of the film, and try to allow about 10 minutes at the end for comments and questions. At this point, I'll turn it over first to the 2 Marys to discuss the festival.
Well, I thought I would talk a little bit about the first festivals and how I got involved and how I feel about bluegrass music, and a little bit about the festival that we produce now, which is called Gray Fox, and it is the 3rd weekend in July. And I'll tell you a little bit about it, and then Mary will tell you a whole lot more. Carlton Haney is the father of the Bluegrass Festival. And up until lunch today, I thought that that was really the first festival, but Bill Keith assures me that and that was in 1965, and Bill assures me that in 1960, there was a 1-day festival. So I'll have to say that Carlton Haney is the father of the multi-day Bluegrass Festival. And his first one was in Fincastle, Virginia in 1965, followed by festivals in Berryville, Virginia, Gettysburg, PA, Camp Springs, North Carolina, and Escohegan, Rhode Island. And this is a copy of the poster of the first festival. And I thought you all might like to pass it around and look at it. He became interested in bluegrass music because he had a crush on Bill Monroe's daughter, Melissa. And people are drawn into this music for all kinds of reasons. The main question I am invariably asked is, how did you get into bluegrass? I think the answer is simply that I was looking for something and didn't really know what it was. I had always liked music, and friends of mine played, and I was always an avid listener. One night I went to hear my friends open for a much better known band. And when I arrived, there was much confusion. The first act had canceled. The club owner was frantic, asking my friends if they had enough material for the whole evening. I heard myself say, "Not for second act money." At the end of that evening, I had a new career. I started managing this band, the Chicken Spankers, which was a great old-time band. And I had to talk to a lot of producers trying to get them jobs. And one of the producers I talked to was Nancy Talbot, one of the first people to bring bluegrass to the Northeast. We talked for a long time, and my band didn't get the gig, but Nancy persuaded me to attend the Berkshire Mountain Bluegrass Festival that weekend. That weekend that I came up, I was immersed in bluegrass music. One of Lester Flatt's final shows, the Osborne Brothers and Ralph Stanley. I was in heaven. I had found my tribe, and it was people who love bluegrass music. It was some years after that I was able to produce my own show. I was lucky enough to find someone who understood the philosophy I had of trying to make our customers have ownership in the show, to feel that they owned it with us, to tell us the bands they wanted, what we did right, what we did wrong, and participate. And that person was Ron Thomason with the Dry Branch Fire Squad. And they have been our host band for the last 25 years. At the very first festivals, the two festivals, I did everything. I did the booking, I did the volunteers, I picked the vendors, I did everything. And I realized pretty soon that if this show was going to succeed, I needed help. And I found talented people eager to become involved. And that was the way the Gray Fox, then Winterhawk family came together. The family idea spread quickly, and soon we had something for nearly everyone. A friend of mine said that for years she thought there was nothing beyond the main stage. But as she married and had children, she discovered a whole festival opened up, and now 2 of her children are in our Bluegrass Academy. Through the years, we've experienced a lot together. Challenging weather, amazing music, and beautiful sunsets. But nothing was as hard, I guess, as when our venue was sold, forcing us to find a new location and build a whole new festival in just 6 months. I can't begin to describe what it was like tromping through knee-deep snow, looking for another home. Once again, fortune smiled on us, and we ended up at the Walsh Farm in Oak Hill, New York. One of the things I've learned about my tribe is it encompasses people of all ages and all walks of life. People come to Gray Fox from over 40 states and 15 countries. Our music continues to spread, and one of the reasons is an organization called the International Bluegrass Music Association, of which I am proud to say I was a founding member. Probably the best thing to happen to me was finding the amazing people I work with. Mary Burdett, Lisa Houston, Caroline Zoxon, Janet Brightly, and many more. They all make Gray Fox one of the best, maybe the best festival on the planet. I have to stand up. Being a former teacher, I have to stand up. The
It's really nice to be here. And as I was driving, I live in the Finger Lakes, and I was driving to pick Mary up from the airport this morning, and I was just going over, some of the things I'd like to share with you today. And I was just wondering, I was just thinking about how really interesting it is, all the little paths that we take in our lives that really lead to God knows where, And I came to the conclusion that I'm here today because of cheese. My grandfather was a cheesemaker. I never knew my grandfather, but when I was about 25, 26, I opened a cheese store in Gloversville, New York. And in one day came this man who I ended up dating, and I never grew up with any bluegrass music in my household. I mean, that was like the last thing that we would be listening to. And so the likelihood of me being here today is kind of slim to none. However, so John came through the door, and we dated, and he said, let's go to a bluegrass festival. And it was the Berkshire Mountain Bluegrass Festival, which was in Greenville, New York. The precursor to Winterhawk and then our festival, Gray Fox. And so we went, and we got out of the car, and we found a place to tent, to camp. And then we wandered down to the stage, and Ralph Stanley was on the stage. And I felt like a duck who had just, hatched. And Ralph has always been, since then, my hero, a bluegrass hero. So that weekend, I literally walked around wondering where I had been all my life. And knowing that in some fashion, my life would never be the same. And I, who else has had that kind of epiphany in their lives about, just discovering something that they didn't know existed before and going, oh my God, yeah. And they happen to be bluegrass people. And it could happen to you when you come to, this class and come to Gray Fox. And then, so I couldn't wait to get home after the event was over. I wrote to Nancy Talbot, and I ended up working for her for a couple of years. And that led to event planning. I was teaching at the time. I was a special ed teacher. And I was living in a small community. And I had to go to the post office for some reason. I was working my way through graduate school. And I went past this barber shop. This was a couple of years after I discovered bluegrass. And, but I didn't play any instruments at all. And so I walked past this barber shop, and I heard what I knew was bluegrass, and I knew that it was live bluegrass. So I kind of took a couple steps backward and looked in, and there was the barber in his nice, neat outfit, playing the mandolin, and one of his customers playing the fiddle. And I went in, and of course, open arms, and he said, well, we have a I'll get back to Gray Fox in a moment, but we have a jam session, like every other Wednesday night. Why don't you come? I said, well, I don't play an instrument. And he said, well, that's okay, just come. So I would take my papers, my school papers, and sit in the corner and, correct papers and listen to the music. Until one night, the woman who was always the bass player didn't show up. And then, literally, I was in the corner, and somebody looked around and said, you, get up here. And I kind of looked around, but there wasn't anybody behind me. So I got up, and they said, here's the G, here's the C, here's the D. We'll play in G all night long. I had no idea what that meant, but somebody stood next to me and said, go to the G. And at the end of the night, they said, gee, your timing is pretty good. You should take the bass home, and you should listen to Del McCurry Bill Monroe, and Bob Paisley. Straight ahead bluegrass. And of course, that was like gospel coming out of, this guy's mouth, so that's what I did, and I just was on fire. And I went back 2 weeks later, and they said, wow, you learned a lot. and that led to me playing in bands, and being on recordings, and playing in Europe, and always having the good fortune to be playing with people who were better than I was. Fortunately, my timing is okay, so it's been a pleasure. So from Cheese to me standing here, it's been an interesting road, and I'm completely honored to be in the music that I'm in. And I came from more of a jazz listening crowd, and every once in a while I would say, who needs bluegrass? And I would immerse myself in jazz again. And then bluegrass would come up and go, I'd just go, wow, it just really speaks to me. So I keep coming back to bluegrass, and now I'm never gonna leave. I'm here for good. So for Gray Fox, one of the things that I do several things, but I help with publicity, I help with the website, I help with a lot of the educational programs. Being a teacher, I'm naturally drawn to those types of things. And Gray Fox is a very multifaceted festival. We have several different stages, and one is the main stage. And we've gone from, I think in 1976, there were 13 bands, and I counted up the bands that we have this year, and there are nearly 40 for the main stage. So we've grown considerably. It literally is a who's who of bluegrass music, from very traditional music to very, what I call out there music. Very jazzy, very improvisational, and everything in between. So that's happening on the main stage. We have another stage which is a tented venue that holds a couple of hundred people, and that's actually my favorite stage. And in the past we've called it the workshop stage or the master stage, and we have different combinations of, say, banjo players. We'll have a banjo workshop, or a guitar workshop. And Fred Robbins is one of the people who's always there filming that, and it's great because then I actually get to see what happened on that stage. We're all really busy during the festival, so we don't get to see much music. And then we have a huge tent, and it's been intended for dance. It's kind of taking a little bit of it's evolving into a second venue or a third venue for our main stage bands. And then we have a kids academy, which is near and dear to me. And that is it's an academy for 8 to say 17-year-olds, school-age kids. And we have instruction in all the bluegrass instruments and harmony singing throughout the weekend. It starts on Thursday and goes through Sunday. And on Sunday, they have the kids all troop on over to the main stage, and they have their graduation gig. And the first year that we were on the main stage, I was out in the audience listening, and I noticed I was sitting next to these two guys with tattoos, and they were hardcore. And I looked over, and one of them was looking to the right, and the other was looking to the left, and they were both wiping tears away from their eyes because they were so moved by the kids on the stage. And I just went, yes, we're doing something really right here. So that is happening. And then we also have a hands-on workshop stage, and if any of you play instruments, you can bring your instruments, and go to those and for the instrument of your choice and have an hour, basically an hour lesson on Fridays and Saturdays. So we do that. We're really all about education and entertainment. So it's edutainment, I guess, at its best. And then we have a family stage, and on the family stage there are all sorts of performances, crafts, and anything that it would be really, it's involvement for 2-year-olds to, say, 16-year-olds. And we have movies at night, and a lot of things for kids. And then we have a slow jam tent. And if you're really starting out with your instrument, you can come to the slow jam tent, and the faculty there slows all the tunes down, teaches you, goes through them, and then you play that tune many, many times until you get it. And it's very user-friendly. So that's another thing that we do. And then Dr. Banjo, who's from Colorado, is coming again this year, and he will do his Bluegrass Jam Camp for 4 days before the festival begins, across the street in the fire hall. And that's a really popular thing too. So that's kind of the structure of the event. We sell about 4,000 camping tickets, and then we sell day tickets. And most of the campers, most people who come are campers. So there are jam sessions all over the campgrounds from Wednesday when we open the gates through Sunday. And it's a great opportunity to not only, have fun listening, but also having fun picking. So that's a really big part. It's a huge part of the festival. I dare say that some of the people who come for that reason alone, and they may not, they may go to the main stage for a couple of acts, but otherwise they're back at their campsites and they're picking and grinning for the whole time. Ruth Oxenberg and her husband Rob Schumer chose Gray Fox as she said before. Did I get that before? Have we spoken yet? Okay. Because it's a quintessential festival, and I agree with that. It's really well done. I think we've thought of everything that could possibly go wrong and have tried to fix it. Yes, sometimes it's impossible, but it's a great festival. And if you come for the day, you park, and then we have a shuttle bus that takes you up to the main stage, and we have wonderful food. We were actually written up in Gourmet magazine one year for the greatness of the food vendors. So that's really another reason to come. And so that's kind of what it is. And like Mary was talking about, Mary Dow was talking about, it's a situation, it's a community where people really feel like they have an ownership. And if people start coming who don't really get it, they don't stay for very long. I think they just, they go, what's all this about? But when you actually do get it, and you really embrace the idea of bluegrass and the community that it makes, I think it really, it's just it's a wonderful thing. It's a life-changing thing. It was for me. So, anything else I should talk about? I think I'm going to hand it over to Ruth, who will talk about her film a little bit more and show some.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm honored to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I grew up in New York City. My husband grew up in New York City. I had a lot of jazz music as a kid in my household, my parents and my husband, a lot of show tunes. neither of us had ever heard anything about bluegrass music. Although he remembered, as we were planning our wedding, having once heard this band in California or in Oregon. He was in college out there, and he was a big Grateful Dead fan. And Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead was in a band for less than a year with a couple of bluegrass guys called Old and in the Way. And this really is a turning point in the history of bluegrass music, because Jerry Garcia brought all these rock and roll 60s people in, and Jerry Garcia was a bluegrass player before he was in Grateful Dead. And so my husband sort of remembered, he was lucky, he happened to catch one of the rare performances of Old and in the Way, and he always remembered it. He remembered this great young singer named Peter Rowan. And so when we were fast forward planning our wedding years later, he kind of said, maybe let's get bluegrass music. We live in Columbia County, we were getting married at our house. That'd be perfect for an outdoor wedding. And one thing led to another. I was a producer at ABC News. We were living in New York. I was working for the World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. And we got into this music. It turned out the wedding was the same weekend as this festival in Anchordale on the Rothfuss Farm, and our caterers said, oh, maybe you can get a band for them. So somebody said to me, you've got to call this woman Mary Dowd. And somehow I called the farmers, and they led me to some other farmers, and I get this woman in Baltimore. This woman, and it turns out, this is an important woman in bluegrass music. This is a very important woman in bluegrass music. And she couldn't have been more gracious and helpful. We ended up hiring a great band, and the next year I went to the festival, and suddenly my husband says, why don't you pitch a story to Peter Jennings? Maybe he'd like to do a story about the growing popularity of bluegrass music. This was 1996, and it really was sort of on the rise. So I did this story for World News Tonight. Did the story, and it really was just a survey piece about the growing popularity. And while we were shooting, part of it we shot at Winterhawk at the time, we had a Greek-American cameraman who was working with us. He couldn't believe what he was experiencing. To him, it was the ultimate capsule of America, the best things that we have to offer in our country, just this happiness and this youthfulness and this playfulness and beautiful music, and never mind the beautiful scenery that you get in the Taconic Mountains. So leaving the festival that day, my husband turned to me and said, we should do a movie. We should make an independent documentary. So we did. And it took us 7 years, and it was, coming up with the idea and raising the funds and then doing all the filming. And we worked with an incredibly talented editor who we ended up giving director credit to, because I basically went in there with hours and hours, hundreds of hours of footage. All the camera people and sound people who worked with us to shoot were all people I'd worked with through ABC and NBC, where I used to work too. So we had beautiful material. Jerry Douglas, the musician, was our music producer, so everything was recorded beautifully. And Nancy, our editor, spent 9 months. We decided, let's splurge and really go for it. And we spent 9 months in the edit room, just piecing it all together and building the story. And so we made this film, and it was an amazing experience, and much of it was, again, thanks to the incredible hospitality of Mary and Mary, who opened their festival to us and gave us all the access that we could ever dream of. You wouldn't get this in rock and roll. You wouldn't get this, I don't think, in any other music. Just the nature of the bluegrass community is one that's very welcoming, very supportive, and everybody's accessible. And so we made this film, and I'd like to show you some of it.
Bluegrass. What is bluegrass? My dad has always said, that's the hardest thing for me to explain.
It's the spirit, I think. It's like so much from the heart.
Just like honesty. Such an honest form of music.
It's a connection to nature. It's a connection to simpler times when community was a bigger part of life.
Bluegrass is one of the only types of music that you could actually go to a festival and you could jam in the parking lots, play with other people. All types of people play it. I mean, we're from LA and we play bluegrass.
Good thing about bluegrass music is it's not just being a fan of the music, it's a whole lifestyle.
He brought me here for our first date, and since then I didn't know I was going to be a bluegrass babe, but here I am. We, for 17 years, have done this.
Yeah.
I met some of these guys 10, 15 years ago at one of these festivals. Most of the people I never ever see except once a year here.
Ooh, yeah. Yummy, yummy. We live large up here.
Someone's talking about it all year. What are you gonna bring? Well, I got this great table, you know. It's like, oh, cool, you know, like, got this new tent.
This is for Saturday's dinner. Beef tenderloin, about 40 pounds.
There you go. 4-person shower.
Yeah, well, we've been getting ready for this for 6 months.
Like, look at this festival. I mean, everybody on this mountain is like together and a part of this
Community, yeah.
It's just always a great time.
Relaxed, friendly.
Yeah, I like bluegrass.
Bluegrass.
Gray Fox.
Oh, yeah, Gray Fox.
Welcome to Gray Fox.
Hey, it's bluegrass all the way. Bluegrass, that's why we're here.
Bluegrass is sort of a small town where a certain kind of person meets. There's this whole circuit, and there's all these people that are really into banjos and fiddles and mandolins.
It works.
You sort of have a community where people give you the benefit of the doubt. They're interested to see what you have to offer because you're part of their club. I don't think the bluegrass crowd wants to see a lot of lights. They don't want to see a lot of fancy costumes. They don't expect anything elaborate.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen.
They just want something real.
He invented a bluegrass sound, and he's been taking it all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to welcome one of the foremost bluegrass bands in the world today. Here's the Del McCoury Band.
There was a girl I knew. She said she cared about me. She tried to make my world the way she thought it should be. Yeah, we were desperate then to have each other to hold. But love is a long, long road. There are so many times I would wake up at noon with my head spinning round. I would wait for the moon and give her one more chance to try and save us. But love is a long, long road. Love is a long, long road.
The guitar, the fiddle, the banjo, the mandolin, and the bass, and harmony singing. It's kind of like folk music in overdrive. It's not a commercial music, and you're not selling a million records. But because you love it so much, that is it. That's the reason you do it.
It was hard to give up. Some things are hard to let go. Some things are never enough. I guess I only can hope for maybe one more chance to try and save my soul. But love is a long, long road. Love is a long, long road. Love
Bluegrass came from Bill Monroe originally. Back in the 30s, he was looking, I'm sure, for a certain combination of musicians, you know, back then. And in the 40s, he was experimenting with all different things, you know, to try to come up with a sound. And he may have accidentally came upon this sound that he had, you know. And he realized soon after that it was a good sound, you know. And it was completely different from anything that had ever been done before, you know.
It's mighty dark for me to travel, for my sweetheart is gone.
Bill Monroe started the Bluegrass Boys in 1939. He didn't even call it bluegrass. It was named after Kentucky, not after bluegrass music. That term came along maybe 10 years later. People were by then imitating that band's sound so closely that somebody had to give it a name. And what the Bluegrass Boys accomplished in 2 years in the middle, late 40s is what really got a lot of people involved in bluegrass.
Oh, the Mississippi River runs deep and wide, and the woman I'm loving's on the other side. Down she goes, and I don't worry, Lord, I'm sitting on top of the world. Shake my tree, tell my orchard, leave my peaches be. As it goes, and I don't worry, Lord, I'm sitting on top of the world.
Bob Paisley and the Southern Grass are a rock-solid traditional bluegrass group. The classic form that Bill Monroe developed. Bill Monroe combined the old Scots-Irish music, gospel singing, blues. There's a lot of African influence as well. Brother duets, family singing, there's a lot of elements, and he kind of synthesized them into what we call bluegrass.
Oh, the Mississippi River runs deep and wide, and the woman I'm loving's on the other side. As it goes, and I don't worry, Lord, I'm sitting on top of the world. As it goes, and I don't worry, Lord, I'm sitting on top of the world.
Thank you. Bob Paisley and the Southern Grass.
You know, bluegrass is thought of as rural music. It's really often played without any amplification, just for fun, you know, in a kitchen or on a back porch. Out in the campground is perfect. So you have a lot of good jam sessions going on.
Sure be hard to find. Still put your arms around me, dear, and be my turtle dove. And then I feel like number one on your hit parade of love. I want a hit parade of love, I don't want to ever stop. I got a long, long way to climb before I reach the top. But if I do get there soon, I really got it made. Then I know I'm number one on your lover's hit parade.
Bluegrass is a strong spice, you know. It features a lot of real high nasal singing, you know, men singing at the top of their ranges and kind of straining.
Yeah, we'll be having so much fun, we really have it made.
It may be a little unnatural seeming at first,
I'm a hit parade of love, I know I'll never stop.
but once you sort of get the taste for it, it kind of won't let you go.
But if I do get there soon, I really got it made.
It's a very archaic thing. It's actually done, you know, consciously. You're kind of reaching back in time to an earlier era with the music.
It's kind of like an old tree that has new branches on it. You'll still hear groups like Dry Branch Fire Squad. They have a direct connection to the old hillbilly sound. A lot of people want to hear that. That's their favorite kind of bluegrass. And then you'll hear a lot of the younger, some of the long hair bands that are incorporating rock and roll sounds into what they're doing. That's welcome too. It's getting to be a bigger and bigger tree.
Oh, don't make him ask you. Oh, don't make him beg. He was a war hero. That's how he hurt his leg. He'll kill 30 Indians with one cannonball. He's just an old hobo asleep out in the hall. He used to be a gambling man just like you, till he sank so low there was nothing that no one could do.
You have to know a lot about the roots of bluegrass to keep the roots of it alive. And I think if you keep the roots alive, then what you add to it is all legitimate. It's fine.
It's originally more or less a three-chord music. A lot of it came from church singing and the blues, which was more soul than it is technique.
Their wife and 5 children who live in L.A. They miss their dear daddy. He's gone so far away, but they still have his picture. It's hung on the wall. He's just an old hobo asleep out in the hall. He used to be a gambling man just like you, till he sank so low there was nothing that no one could do. He used to be a gambling man just like you, till he sank so low there was nothing that no one could do.
What do you think about this festival?
It's fun. It's really fun. It's cool. I like listening to the music. That's one of my favorite parts. I look forward to Del McCurry every year. I go to look.
The rice is really good too.
Steam some mussels in there. We're going to steam some crawfish over here.
The gator we're going to blacken on the flat top.
We got some Cajun boiled peanuts going on over here.
I think probably the jambalaya is. This is the man. He's the jambalaya man.
Seems to be the most popular dish. Yeah.
The weather, the food. The food, yes. Yeah. The food is the best food I ever tasted. Oh yeah, cheeseburgers.
All right.
Look at.
1, 2, ready, banjo.
The way the music is taught is sort of by ear and by example. It's an oral tradition. Pretty soon, people are imitating one another and doing it pretty well.
Bluegrass is getting bigger and bigger as
really
time
big
is going
every
on.
year.
It's getting more popular, and people are learning about it, and a lot of people
Discovering
really
it.
like it. Once you hear bluegrass once,
Yeah,
you're
you're
stuck on it,
addicted to it.
and you're addicted to it, and you come to all the festivals, and then you start playing it, and maybe you start forming your own band, and that's how it grows.
It's almost like you're a slave to it. I mean, I am now. I can't deal without listening to it, you know?
For me, I just get to learn so much on the mountain here. I mean, plus you have the workshops and the shows, you know, just watching great players. You know, you get to, for me, I just get to learn so much.
When you come to this festival, there's the biggest names in bluegrass are here, man. They're right there, and you can go up and say hello and have a shake and a howdy, so to speak.
Just got the CD and it's awesome.
Thank you.
And last year when you were here with Pete playing in for Charles, I was really moved because I was friends with Heather and Susie, and I lost touch with Heather.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess she's doing all right. I see her. She's out in California again.
With the bluegrass world, there's very little barrier between the audience and the musicians.
Sure.
The musicians know the audience members. They actually know them by name.
Sign a couple of these sketches.
And I used to think, well, they don't know me. But they act like that. And then I realized, no, they do know me. When you write a song or you choose a song to sing, it's got to be something that you believe in, that is part of you. You're bearing your soul. I mean, if you're doing a good job, in my opinion, you're bearing your soul.
Now when you left me in the springtime, so many questions in my mind. Summer came and left me waiting, not one answer would I find. But I saw you out in the Rocky Mountains, felt you on the great North Sea. It's a lonesome road we have to travel, but you will always be with me. Brother, come and walk beside me till our pathways to divide. Nothing much but love to give you, even less help eye to eye. I hear laughter in the thunder, I feel comfort in the wind, and I see hope in the hopeless faces, and someday they will love again. People come and walk beside me till our pathways do divide. Nothing much but love to give you, even less help eye to eye. Walk beside till our pathways to divide. Nothing much but love to give you, just love, and even less help eye to eye. Putting one foot in front of the other, stepping into the here and now. I'm not sure just where I'm going, but I'm going to get there anyhow.
The bluegrass world, they value innovation, they value your personal expression. I've been able to go my own way all the way along as a result. Growing up, you know, I wanted to be a great instrumentalist, and then I realized I could be a good singer, so I worked on that. And now I'm always learning, and I think I know better now what I could do.
Okay, let's get the heck to Knoxville. So there's 6 lockers, 6 members of the band. You can each have your own locker.
I started out playing really traditional music, trying to be as traditional as possible, really.
But all along, there was a tendency to want to extend it a little bit. Here in the last 5 years or so, I'm realizing, well, okay, I've followed a traditional path. I can look back, and I keep looking back and going farther back.
Okay, there it is up there.
And learning about what went before. Exploring the earlier Celtic music, British Isles ballads and that kind of thing, and to combine it with bluegrass is, to me, a very logical thing. It shows people that maybe don't really realize it, where it comes from. Bill Monroe's ancestors were the Scots-Irish planters who came to this country and sort of settled down through the Appalachian Mountains. It's an old Bill Monroe song. Bill Monroe and Charlie Monroe actually recorded this back in their years together. Where's my sailor boy, or what does the deep sea say?
Where is my sailor boy? Where is my sailor boy? He sleeps at the bottom of the deep blue sea, and he can't go back to me. I stand on the beach alone and gaze at the misty blue. Deep sea, as you called into your breath, does he mention my name to you? What does the deep sea say? What does the deep sea say? It moans, it grows, it splashes and it falls, and it rolls on its weary way. Please tell me, deep blue sea, is he sleeping peacefully? The winds from the north are blowing icy cold. Please keep him warm for me. What does the deep sea say? What does the deep sea say? It moans, it grows, it splashes and it foams, and it rolls on its weary way.
You have all these influences from the immigrants coming to the United States, all mixing together, becoming what we call American music. Whether it's rock and roll, jazz, or country music, they're all combinations of those things. Bluegrass sort of crystallized into a certain form with 5 or 6 instruments, fiddles and banjos right at the center of it. And they've taken that branch and sort of pruned that and replanted that, and it's become its own kind of music. And it keeps growing and developing.
Thank you.
My name is Rowsby Cusenberry, and I am very fortunate to be the site coordinator for the Gray Fox Festival. Now, a lot of my concerns, especially today, is going to be on the weather, and if the need arises that we have to warn the customers in the amphitheater and the concert area that they need to return to their camps, we will do that.
I'm starting to sprinkle a little bit.
Okay. I'm going to have to be excused if I can, and I think I will go check the weather radar here.
I see some sun up there. I'm optimistic.
questions out there. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about Bill Monroe's style of playing.
Well, Bill Monroe, the question is about Bill Monroe's style and some of the things about it that made it his own. You know, mandolin there wasn't really a blueprint, so he sort of had to make it up himself. But he picked a lot of old-time fiddle tunes. He played with his brothers and with his Uncle Pen and with Arnold Schultz playing blues and old-time fiddle songs at dances and that kind of thing. So he brought that to it. I think really the blues thing was pretty important. A lot of times you listen to Bill Monroe, it sounds like Chuck Berry stuff, where you sounds like Chuck Berry did, 10 or 15 years later, on like, what's that song?
Stomp?
Bluegrass Stomp. Yeah, Bluegrass Stomp is one of those ones, just like a blues. I mean, Ron could really do it justice.
I'll just play a little bit of it. You guys play with me. Just.
To go, you guys. I'm gonna go over and play with Terry. But hey, that was really fun.
Chris Seeley, ladies and gentlemen.
Mandolins are awesome.
Started to play dobro when I was about 10. It was so vocal to me. It had something, that just went deep into me. there's this sound that I have in my head that I want to get to, and the only way to get to that sound is to be physical with the instrument.
When the rain comes, it's just that much harder to maintain safety. I think the only thing that would make us shut down would be a big lightning storm, because that's always a huge danger. But right now it's just your basic heavy rain. So the show goes on and the fans are out there just having the time of their life, and it's amazing.
Yes, the dancing is going to happen tonight. The dance stage is fully covered. It's great.
I love you as much today as the very first time.
There's this common language that exists, and you get together with people you've never met, and relationships develop.
And the most wonderful time of the year for all of us.
People get married.
There's going to be a wedding going on right now.
We met here 10 years ago and we celebrate every year. Now we have a double celebration.
You know that story? Margot and Earl met at this festival 10 years ago. And also it's really neat, last year they won Best Campsite. So they got to come here for free. And it's like, and these are all their friends that always come here.
And now it'll be Best Wedding Site.
Your clever fingers tie closely the bonds between these two. Give them the deepest of love and richness of body, of soul, and of spirit. Blessed Goddess and laughing God, we ask these of these two. Your love and protection, blessed be. Blessed be.
I like that great box.
Let that run, man. Let that run. Woohoo! Just married.
realize all the time that if it weren't for the fans, you know, you couldn't be doing this.
If I could just walk on water,
You're working for those fans. Therefore, when I get on stage, you know, I like to do requests if they request a song.
Has anybody got a request? We haven't done one yet.
There might be 70 people hollering a song at the same time. Well, you can't tell what any of them were. And it's funny, you know?
Huh? Rain and snow. Rain and snow? Did I hear that? Okay.
I married me a wife. She gave me trouble all my life. Left me out in the cold rain and snow. Rain and snow. Oh, Lord. Left me out in the cold rain and snow. She came down the stairs, combing back her long yellow hair, and her cheeks were red as a rose. And her rose, oh Lord, and her cheeks were red as a rose.
I totally enjoy the fact that I get to play with my dad. We've been playing together nearly 20 years. My brother's been there 16, I think, so we kind of know what each other does and what the next step they're going to take, and we kind of really gel together, you know.
I married me a wife. She gave me trouble all my life. Left me out in the cold rain and snow. Rain and snow. Oh, Lord. Left me out in the cold rain and snow.
Back when I was small, we didn't have television. We had radio, but, and we lived in the country, you know, way back. I grew up on a farm, so a lot of times there wasn't anything to do, but I had an instrument there that I could play, you know, and it's kind of like a friend. My dad showed me how to, you know, just chords, you know, on the mandolin. And he showed me a few breaks, and he said, if you want to get up, you know, go ahead. My dad never told us to practice once, never once. like when I was first teaching these boys of mine to play. They both came to a point where I could hear things that I'd never heard anybody else play, including them. And I thought, you know, now from here on, I'm going to leave them alone. I ain't going to tell them anything because I hear something, and that must be them coming out now, what I'm hearing.
Del McCurry Band, you have two brothers, Ronnie and Robbie, singing with their dad. And that family aspect is strong throughout bluegrass in history and to this day. With Nickel Creek, you have the brother and sister, Sean and Sarah Watkins. Bluegrass is so divergent, and yet a lot of people think it's all one religion. But there's a bunch of different strains of that one religion, and Nickel Creek is a group who play the bluegrass instruments, and they do some traditional bluegrass, but their music goes way beyond that.
Nickel Creek is an amazing group of acoustic musicians.
Thank you, guys.
And when I first met them, when they were really pretty little, they were a bluegrass band. In fact, Chris Thiele, I first heard him play at 7, and I put together a band of young kids. That was a wonderful thing to see that much talent.
Chris Thiele, when he was 8 years old, I remember at a festival in California where we were jamming away, and we had just met, and he said, my goal is to stay up until midnight.
Nickel Creek loved bluegrass, and I'd run into Chris, especially at bluegrass festivals, and that's how they were raised, on bluegrass. But they're advanced musicians with wide open ears, and they're catching a lot of other ideas from all sorts of genres.
This one's called Old Cold Coffee on the Dashboard.
rhythms, the complex arrangements, the complex melody lines. It's complicated music that doesn't concern itself with whether it's agreeing with definitions of bluegrass music.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Every year in the fall, the International Bluegrass Music Association, or IBMA for short, stages a convention which is called World of Bluegrass. Every festival is a family reunion, but this is the Big Daddy. IBMA is a weird setting, but if you gotta go and have a bunch of bluegrass people get together in October, it's a lot safer to do it inside. It draws an even more hardcore fan. I mean, these are people that hadn't gotten enough throughout the year.
Big boss man, well, can't you hear me when I call?
And they just want one more blast.
Big boss man, can't you hear me when I call? You know you ain't so big, yeah. I said you're just tall, that's all. Somebody play the blues now. Singing all the good times are past and gone. All the good times are all the good times are past.
Never seen anything like this. This is incredible. Everybody rubbing shoulders with everybody else, and the diversity of music.
The action at the convention and, you know, the after-hours jams, you know, this spontaneous recombining of old friends, it's just, I mean, it's an anthill of bluegrass activity. It's like the smorgasbord of smorgasbords as far as who's there to perform and who's jamming in the hallways and the motel rooms.
For Americans, sometimes it's funny, you know, they don't realize how vast their influence is. We have a bluegrass scene in Switzerland, and we have 3 festivals in Switzerland, and people playing banjos and mandolins and guitars. Quarter 3. At this point, IBMA means I've been mostly awake, but...
Do one more tune and then go to bed. turn tears in my eyes. Wondering why you said goodbye. These old blues, they got me down. Says the sweet thing, she ain't around. I'm as blue as I can be, just as blue as they can see.
And they also have this wonderful awards show. And the awards night is great because everybody gets to their finest outfits. And they are really excited. They really are celebrities, especially during this week.
This is a little over 40 years my dad's been playing, and he's really got a lot of recognition in the last few years. And for us to be there and see it all happen is really something. And we know we're a part of it, you know.
Yeah.
It's really important, I think, for bluegrassers to feel good about themselves. Sort of a humble music. Every year at IBMA, at the award show in particular, we remind ourselves that this is really fine music and we are part of a very important art form.
I'll leave today to try to find my daughter. Well, I don't know where on earth he could be. I only know that I can't live without him. Each night in dreams, his face is all I see. I hear that wind blowing through the lonesome pine, and I know my love is gone too. I hear that wind blowing through the lonesome pine. That's why blue looks so I hear that wind blowing through the lonesome pine, and I know my love is gone too. I hear that wind blowing through the lonesome pine. That's why blue looks so blue. That's why blue looks so blue. That's why blue looks so blue.
It's time to strap on your seatbelts, put your seat back in their full and upright position, and welcome one of the most dynamic bluegrass songs. Bluegrass? I said it twice, didn't I? What color dress did Dolly have on?
me something tacky you're saying.
I
What?
said you had on a pretty dress. And we're glad to have you in bluegrass music.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Dolly, it says, welcome to the most dynamic ensembles.
Is that me?
Yeah. No.
Is that what they're calling them now? Well, you better just read your script and turn me loose, Marty.
No. Well, let me get this banner. Welcome one of the most dynamic bluegrass ensembles to hit any stage. Together, they're nominated for 6 awards, Dolly.
Awards?
Entertainer of the Year. Here's the Lonesome River Band.
Yes, they're great.
Now on those nights when you're sad and lonely, I won't be calling for you. When you're broken hearted and think of me only, I won't be calling for you. This train that I'm riding's headed on down the track. No, I'll not be calling, won't be coming back. Now when you hear that lonesome whistle blowing, I won't be calling for you. When you think of our love and the tears start flowing, I won't be calling for you. This train that I'm riding's headed on down the track. No, I'll not be calling, won't be coming back. Crying and calling my name, I won't be calling for you. Just look in the mirror and see who's to blame. I won't be calling for you. This train that I'm riding's headed on down the track. No, I'll not be calling, won't be coming back. Yeah. Headed on down the track. No, I'll not be calling, won't be coming back.
It's a real feel-good thing. All the members vote for their particular favorites in the various categories. You know, we see our friends and heroes get up there and get their just rewards and recognition for what they do.
And the award goes to the Dale McCoury Band.
Nashville can play cleanest country water. Nashville can play.
Well, I'd like to say I'm just as excited as Larry Shelb. I just don't show it. I'd like to thank my mother. She is not feeling too good tonight, but I'm sure she'll hear this on the radio, and I'd like to thank her and my dad too for the way I was brought up. I went to church, you know, and started the first time I sang in public was in church, and I was scared to death, and I still am sometimes when I go on stage, but I thank the Lord for the gift. You boys want to say something? Uh-oh. This is my grandson, and come up here, Jacob. Can you talk right into this? Can you?
I want to thank my family and my friends, but my cousins, Evan and Joshua, couldn't be here. They're a little bit too young, and I'm glad that I get to be here tonight, but that's all.
We need to thank the sixth member of the band. The seventh, I guess, is my mother, who's there every night with us. And
it's all about the music. I mean, it really is. It's, you know, you can pick this award up or whatever, but it means a lot. But then on the other hand, you just want to go play some more.
One of the things about art is you give people an excuse to take some time to be quiet and pay attention to something. And maybe under the guise of enjoyment, think about important things in life.
Glad to see you all survive the evening. Whether you know it or not, you're now part of Gray Fox history because you survived our own perfect storm.
We had maybe about 8 inches in that corner back there. Now there's about a couple inches there. There were times last night the rain was so heavy you couldn't hear even each other talking in the little awning there. You couldn't even see any of this. It was just pouring.
We just huddled underneath the tarp, kept emptying it as it bellied, and still laughing this morning. So everybody's on the same level here. Doesn't matter what you do outside in the outside world. Everybody's just here to enjoy bluegrass and enjoy the outside. And if it means the rain, it means the rain.
It was a little damp, but we made it. Nothing blew away. We stayed on the ground. So just drying out, and we'll be back next year in a trailer.
People respect each other at these events, and they treat each other well. And they go through a lot to be here, climb hills, wade through mud, get a little dirty around the edges, and maybe miss their shower, and they still they come back for more. Okay, hit those good chords loud as you can. Okay, now guitars, let's hear a gyro. 1, 2, and here we go. Again. It's thrilling to have an object in your hands that'll make a sound. Hear it. And it's thrilling to combine it with other people. Okay, the banjos. When you get playing and singing together, you just feel together with the other people. And everybody, we gotta keep that rhythm going a little faster. Yeah, now the melody. Roll on, buddy, roll on. Roll on, buddy, roll on. All right, fiddles, let's hear it.
I've literally had people come up and say that we have changed their lives. It is the power of music that does that to people.
All instruments together. Sing out now. Roll on, buddy, roll on.
A bluegrass festival is very much like going to church to me. It's a spiritual pursuit. You're talking about things that matter to you with the music, with the lyrics. If you're successful at it in a show, then you can really make everybody kind of go somewhere. And you're all going there together.
Hold up those instruments.
So back, where was I?
for watching. It's a pleasure to share with everybody. I'd just like to say one thing. That was our old site, and it was a beautiful site, but our new site is all flat camping with a gentle hillside to watch the music. A little more user-friendly. A lot more user-friendly. Questions, right? Anybody want to talk? Yes?
Was that the one that was up on 22 on the other side of Hillsdale?
Yeah. Yes.
I wondered where that went. You mentioned Oak Hill. Is that owned by Durham?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes?
The difference between folk and bluegrass.
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to bring up something from last week's. We were privileged to be sent the films from last week. And one of the questions that came up was what's the difference between a fiddle and a violin? And I wasn't really satisfied actually with the answers. And what I would say is that if Itzhak Perlman and Michael Doucet of the Beausoleil, which is he's a great Cajun fiddle player. If there's an instrument on the table and Itzhak Perlman picks it up and plays a classical piece, it's a violin. The same violin picked up by Michael Doucet and ripped into whatever tune he's going to do is a fiddle. So it's just in the technique and the style that it's really played in. So the difference between folk and bluegrass is, as Ronnie McCurry in here said, that bluegrass really is folk music on steroids. In overdrive, yes, and steroids. And so, the instrumentation is one big thing. It's almost always acoustic, and it's almost always with the core bass, mandolin, fiddle, guitar, banjo, sorry, and then and also the dobro. And folk music, you often get like two guitarists doing a tune together. So, or maybe maybe somebody else can expound on that. But say the difference between the Kingston Trio, which was folk, and Del McCurry doing these amazing high harmonies with his son on mandolin and his other son on banjo, and then also Bob Paisley. His son was playing bass, and his son was singing really close harmonies. So I think to me, it's the harmonies, it's that overdrive thing that's going on. It's just a sense of energy, I think. To me, folk music has a different energy. Yes.
I think the term bluegrass is overused. Strict bluegrass is just as Mary described, and we saw some samples of that playing, but oftentimes people refer to other styles of music as bluegrass just because it's kind of easy to throw a term on it, but and it's not, those other styles might be more progressive, have a little more rock, have a little more jazz, have some Irish influence, and there aren't really good terms to coin that type of music, so it's always tricky to put labels on things. That's why we call the film Bluegrass Journey, because a lot of the pieces that you saw are not just that straight classic bluegrass. She went away. I thought she wanted to say more. Oh, yeah.
Being acquainted with Steve Stan, I think it might be helpful if a dobro was described and explained in its history and so forth. There's a lot of them and people may not have recognized. Dobro.
Yeah. It's the guitar with the hubcap on it.
Yeah. played very differently, certainly
Almost like a
comes
steel.
out right here. This,
Yeah. Bill, do you want to take a stab at that? I'm not quite sure. I know that the Dupera brothers were the originators of the dobro.
Well, yes.
It's a resonator. It's called a
Resonator guitar.
Resonator guitar.
And the Dupera brothers, yeah, from the Slovak region, I think. They still have a festival over there for the instrument. They came to the LA area and started building, basically there were slide guitars to be played with a slide, like the Hawaiian style guitar, which is very popular in the 30s, and led to the pedal steel guitar. And yeah, it seemed to attract a lot of, well, a lot of folks that it's fairly easy to play. It's tuned in an open chord, and you just put a bar across the neck to shorten the strings so you hear other chords. And so I think it caught on in the crowd of people that like to play bluegrass music. And of course, Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs added a dobro player to their band in 1954. And that kind of confirmed it as a bluegrass instrument. But it's very closely related to the banjo. Both are tuned to an open.
Who was the dobro player they added?
Josh Graves.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes.
Is there any other instruments other than string instruments in any of the bluegrass music?
In contemporary bluegrass music, the more contemporary you get, sometimes people are adding, have actually for quite a while, people have added drums. And they kind of come in and out of favor. We'll have a couple of bands that have drums at Gray Fox every year. So that's an instrument. And the purists are like, oh God, I can't have a drum in bluegrass, but you certainly can. Sometimes bands have added a piano. So
Our daughter plays bluegrass flute.
bluegrass flute, all right.
There are a few cello players that.
And cello, yes. In fact, the other thing that I wanted to bring up from last week's class, which I viewed, was that is it Kalia? Is that her name? Kalia. She mentioned Bruce Molsky as one of the fiddlers who really was instrumental in bringing old time music, a revival of old time music, which she certainly is and was. And I wanted to add that he will be at Gray Fox this year with a group that's called the Old Time Cosmic Trio. And so there's this, this icon of old time music in Bruce Molsky. And he's going to be playing with a cellist, very young, very wacky cellist whose name is Rashad Eggleston, who I love dearly, and also Daryl Anger, who is one of the most innovative fiddle violinists probably in the world today. And together they make just an amazing sound. And if for nothing, it's one of the acts that I will not miss, Mary.
And I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to add is that I played the European World of Bluegrass in 1999, and at one point I was playing with somebody, we were just jamming, but I was with someone from the Czech Republic, which has more bands per capita than anywhere else in the world, due to particular political reasons, and France, and Germany, and the Netherlands, and someone from Japan. And I went, where else would this happen but in bluegrass music? And everybody was just, and you can play all the same tunes because we all know them. And it's just a lot of fun.
I had a question about who were the two guys who were doing, they were just in the tent in the evening, doing a jamming on a duet of what, the Hit Parade of Love, I think?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who were those guys? They were great.
Well, they were aren't they some people, there's some people from Buddy Merriman's band. One of them is now playing with the String Dusters, a guitar.
Andy Falco.
Andy Falco.
What
size is the site? Acreage, what size is the site?
Our camping field is 60 acres. And then we have another 20 acres at the top, or on a rise, where we have our main stage, and then some tent camping above that.
There's one in the back.
Where can you see your, maybe I missed it, the film in its entirety?
Well, you can find it, I think, on Netflix and the library system. You can order it online. There are a variety of
And
different.
how many hours did you film to get it to that?
Oh gosh, I don't remember exactly. It was a couple hundred.
It was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Was it film or video, and how many cameras did you use?
It was video. It was Betacam. And there were, depending on the shoot, we didn't shoot all of it at Gray Fox, but what you saw was mostly shot on over one weekend. And I was telling the story earlier that for that Saturday, which was going to be our big performance day, we had 7 cameras lined up, including a crane, a jib, but we woke up that morning to pouring rain. So we quickly canceled the jib and repositioned everybody. And again, thanks to Mary and all of the artists' welcome sort of spirit, it was sort of no holds barred. Everybody needed shelter. So the camera people, who were originally supposed to be sort of like out in the audience and way over far away, suddenly everybody was allowed to come on stage. And they were at the feet of these performers, and as a result, we ended up with this incredible, extreme close-up footage. And everybody was just very accepting of it. And most shoots we had, there were multiple cameras. You know, 7 was a lot, 6 was more than usual.
I just wanted to add that I thought the camera work covering the instruments was amazing. Really good.
Well, we purposely had photographers who were musicians because they knew what instrument was playing and they understood where to pan to when somebody started playing a solo. And my husband is a musician as well, and so he was very, very fussy about making sure that all the cuts were musically correct. And I think we got it pretty straight in a few places. Some purists might find a few little edits that weren't quite there. It was just because of footage. We didn't have the footage, but we really tried to make it a great music film, with a little information thrown in.
First of all, I wanted to mention that we have a website, the Hudson Valley Bluegrass Association. It's simple, just hvbluegrass.org. And I'd recommend it. It's a very well-run website, and it always lists the events in the area, who's playing and where, and you'd be surprised how much music there is, how much bluegrass music there is in this area. If there are no further questions, I just thought that was really informative, and the video was great, and I know we all enjoyed it. Can we give them a quick